from Greenpeace Seoul office, in charge of communications work there. So I'm not myself a nuclear campaigner per se. But I can probably give you some sort of picture of where the office is going with this nuclear campaign as a whole, where the country is heading with this nuclear expansion vision, and where I see there's the room for social media to play a role in kind of encountering that government vision. Korea has currently 23 nuclear reactors, and this is responsible for about 30% of the country's electrical generation capacity. Since the first nuclear reactor in 1978, the Korean government has been promoting nuclear as a safe and clean energy. And in fact, the current government even includes nuclear more explicitly in the beginning, but less explicitly now, as part of this green growth strategy, which is highly hailed by international organizations like UN. In fact, but the nuclear safety issue as a whole has become more growing public concern since the Fukushima, because we're right next to a neighboring country, and public opinion poll shows that currently I think about 60% are opposing nuclear, as opposed to around 30% before the accident. So in fact, Fukushima was a great boost in terms of following the anti-nuclear in perception. But what we had in February this year was there was a problem with the very first Korean nuclear reactor called Korea 1 plant, and it actually suffered a blackout. And in fact, the blackout was not reported for like a month, so it was a big scandal, and later the government admitted. And then the prosecutors indicted about 5 senior engineers at that nuclear power plant. But about a few weeks ago, IAEA, the UN nuclear body, they did an extensive investigation of the problem, and they announced that, in fact, there was really no problem with the technology itself, but it was actually due to a poor leadership with emergency management. But in fact, that's what Greenpeace is exactly arguing about the Fukushima accident, because in fact, if anything, Fukushima was not a natural disaster, it was a man-made disaster, because the Japanese government didn't simply try to hide it in fact. How as to we are, campaigning against nuclear in Korea is actually on 2 different fronts. The first is through a publication of some serious scientific reports, such as the lessons from Fukushima, and as an alternative to nuclear, we're also publishing a report called the Energy Revolution, this is a very scientific report. It has a certain limit to appealing to the public sentiment, and unfortunately the Korean media is currently ruled by the conservative ones, and they are not willing to cover, let's say, voices against nuclear. And our mainstream media channel is pretty much limited to 2 or 3 daily newspapers. This is even after Fukushima. So that's why we actually try to convert to the social media space and speak directly to our supporters. And for that, we actually quite recently through a very public engagement action down in Busan. That's like only about 20 kilometers away from the Korea reactor. And what we did was we did a big bannering there saying there's 21 kilometers to the Haeundae Beach, which is actually the most popular beach in Korea. And people either have no second thought about how close the beach is to the nuclear reactor, or they're completely, let's say, brainwashed by the government propaganda that nuclear is safe and clean. There's no much harm to the people who are actually swimming in everything. So I mean, we actually have to carry out more scientific work to prove the evidence. But One thing that we are criticizing with that action was that the Japanese government, after Fukushima, extended the emergency evacuation zone to 30 kilometers. But the current Korean government emergency planning zone remains at between 8 to 10 kilometers. And within the 30-kilometer radius of the Kori reactor, that's including big cities like Busan and Ulsan, there are around 4 million people living there. So in case something happens with the reactor, this would just be a disaster there to evacuate the people there. So there is a serious lack of, let's say, crisis management in terms of the Korean government's nuclear policy, and it seems like nonetheless the government is still trying to expand its nuclear expansion. And I think about 2 months ago, the new Ulsan reactor opened, and even in Kori they're adding up, I think, around 6 or 7 more reactors down there. So the whole Kori complex will in fact become the biggest nuclear cluster in the world.